You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hey girlfriend, welcome to today's episode. This is all about a little manifestation hack that made a massive difference for me in calling things into my life faster, in feeling more connected to my vision. And it's not at all how I manifested in the beginning when I first started doing it. So I saw a major shift, and I'm hopeful that if you hear about this, maybe you are doing what I did in the beginning too, and this can really help shift and amplify your results. So first off, I want to say I'm not going to be getting into like the science of manifestation today. I know it can sound a little woo-woo. I know some people are for it, some people are against it. But for me, I don't care what you call it, right? Like maybe you have different terms for it. Maybe it's visualization, maybe it's prayer. I think those are all good, right? I think what I'm really trying to talk about and the essence of it is like, how do you bring to fruition the dreams that you have for your life, right? However you go about it. For me, I kind of use a mix of all of these different ways. So for me, I call it manifestation, but I think of it as this bucket of all these practices that I use to call a dream into life, whether that's journaling, whether it's prayer, whether it's visualization, whether it's like feeling the feelings of it before it's there. I mean, all of that is part of my process. So manifestation for me kind of becomes this catch-all bucket, referring to all those kinds of practices. And for me, I've just seen the effects of my life. So I have really unknowingly used this since I was little, I think. Even when I was a younger woman, dreaming of going to New York City, like I remember I had put New York everywhere. Like I had it in my passwords. I had it on my walls of my apartment, like photos of New York City. I would listen to songs about New York on repeat. I had this big blue marker date on my refrigerator on a piece of paper for when I wanted to have received a job offer in New York City. And before every interview, I would listen to this song that would get me so pumped up and feeling it. I mean, I would fall asleep picturing what it would feel like to walk down the streets of New York City, having like done it, having gotten the job offer. So for me, I think that's one of the first clearest times that I remember just really throwing everything at it and then seeing it all come true and unfold before my eyes. I mean, I got the job offer before that date on my calendar. On the day on my calendar, I actually ended up being in New York City looking for my apartment just like I had planned, just with the best girlfriend. I mean, I was so locked into the feeling of it that by the time it got there, it was almost like, of course it's here, right? And so since then though, I mean, I've used it for manifesting or calling in just like relationships, like my dream, like, love of my life. Like, I have used it even to like get through breakups, like just shifting my attention to music that made me feel love and made me feel like the relationship that I wanted, right? Like, I'm sure this sounds so nerdy, but this is true. Like, this is who I am and part of my path. And like, lo and behold, like I hear those songs now and I'm just like, that feels like what I have now feels like the relationship that I was imagining back then. And I love that. I've used it in business, in finances, and you can go as sciencey on this as you want in terms of quantum physics. Like I've done meditation conferences around it. I've read Dr. Joe Dispenza's books on it. I am kind of a super nerd on all this stuff in terms of quantum physics or the subconscious and things like that. Again, won't go super deep onto those today. A little bit too intense for what I'm trying to bring in today. But all that to say, like, I've really seen the effects of being intentional with what you want in your life and almost like cultivating the energy of that before it even arrives. Like even every single day, I, will look at like images of things that I want. Even my husband, like he has a vision board too, and it's so fun to like cross those things off. I still right now can see across my room, there's on the refrigerator, there's little sticky notes of things that I'm trying to call in. So I really do kind of practice putting it everywhere, all the time. And here's the shift that I want to share with you. So I used to always try and visualize how it would feel to get the thing I wanted, but I would almost always do it in the future. So I would picture one day I'll have this relationship, but the key word there is one day was part of my visualization. I would picture one day having a successful business, like how it will feel one day to go travel to this place, to make this kind of income, to make this kind of impact, to get on that stage, like to speak in this way, whatever. But notice the subtle difference there. It has a future orientation when you say one day. When you picture that thing still being in the future, for me, that is something to watch. I think actually instead, what's way more powerful and what really got the results faster for me was starting to picture things as if they're already here and almost acclimating to that. So instead of it being like, one day I'll have the great relationship, I started to live in the energy of, I am so loved. I have so much love in my life. I'm supported. I feel cared for. It feels so amazing. And a few things happened. One is I felt better immediately, right? Because all of a sudden I'm not without this thing that I love. Two, I started to see actually in my life how there are all these amazing sources of this thing that I want, right? Of this love, and in friendships and in coworkers and in flowers like blooming in springtime, right? Like that's all around me. So I didn't feel so far away from it. And then three, I think it really helped me acclimate to the feeling of that thing so that once it arrived, I wasn't trying to push it off. Like I wasn't scared of it. I had lived with it in my life and in my body, and I had really felt what it was like to experience that thing. And so I think for me, it just really helped me not to sabotage when it came, if that makes sense. Like, because I think if I had still been thinking of it as that one day thing, it wouldn't have forced me to work through any of the fear that came up when I pictured actually having that thing, right? It allowed me to really just start to get used to that thing and that feeling being in my life. And so I think it felt almost like, of course you're here by the time I received it, because that's how I'd been living for so long. Right? So I think that is really a big difference. And there's this great book called The Big Leap, and it even speaks to that, how sometimes when people achieve a certain amount of success in their career or relationships or whatever it may be, if they haven't acclimated to feeling that, if they haven't practiced the feeling of having that thing in their life, there's this tendency to go and either sabotage it or to mess up some other part of their life to almost get back down to their baseline of what they're comfortable feeling. And you can see this even with people that win the lottery. Maybe part of it is not understanding like money management and stuff, but I do think part of it is mental and emotional too, that like, here's this thing that came into your world that completely upset what you're comfortable feeling, what you're used to. And even if you aren't used to feeling the best things, maybe that's what feels safe because it's familiar. And so all these lottery winners, it's documented time and again, they'll lose the money, and for whatever reason, right? And so yes, maybe it's partly financial practices, but I think there's something deeper going on there that's also just like, a lot of money is maybe an uncomfortable thing to experience if you're used to feeling a certain way, right? And so it's maybe, even if it's counterintuitive, it can be more comfortable to get back to familiarity. And, that's kind of, it happens in so many areas though, right? Like it's not just about the lottery. It's not just about money. So I think it's really a massive thing to be like, okay, this thing that I want, what does that feel like? What would it feel like in my life to have that? You can even name a few words. And how can you practice feeling that now? So if it's something like you want to have like financial abundance, you want to feel overflow. Okay, so maybe you have feelings of freedom Maybe you have feelings of luxury, of comfort, of even just like joy and enjoyment. How can you start to acclimate to that now? How can you start to feel those feelings now? Like, it's not even necessarily a purchase, but how can you start to feel more comfort day to day? Is there something you've been holding off on that actually for a very little amount would make your life a million times easier? Can you even buy something small? Like instead of always opting for, I'm thinking even like dollars different, right? Like instead of getting the conventional strawberries, can you go for those organic strawberries and maybe they're $2 more and that feels unnecessary, but when you bite them, it's a reminder that this is the life that you can live, right? This is the life that you're living now and you feel so luxurious and special and fancy. Like I remember even once buying myself this $9 spritzer of like rose water at Whole Foods because I was like, it feels fun. I want to take a bath and spritz on some rose water, or in the mornings put on a nice shade of lipstick, or get this cute barrette, like little things, right? It's not about the things is the key. It's about the feeling that it gives you, that you're worthy of these things, that you are safe having nice things, that it's not frivolous, right? Like that you deserve to be treated in this way, whether even by yourself. So those are just small examples. Like maybe even with your, career, if you're looking for more freedom or creativity, more inspiration, how can you bring that in now? Like, can you go and take a new class, right? And feel all those feelings again of creativity and of inspiration. Like, can you spend 10 minutes a day writing your novel or watching a YouTube video that makes you go to bed feeling so excited and inspired? Like a 10-minute YouTube video can do that. Watch a TED Talk, Can you have this little business group like on the side, not little to minimalize it, but just like a little act of moving yourself towards something that you want and almost embodying that you are this person, right? Who has business friends and who talks about things like profit and loss and balance sheets and all that stuff. And is around people that believes that all of this is possible, that like this life is possible. So that's another thing that I would try too, is like, it doesn't matter what your thing is, what the goal is, right? Like choose 5 words that describe what you would feel if you had that thing. Like literally go and do this. This is a practice that I've learned about before that, is like good stuff. Go choose those 5 words and then practice being in the feeling of those and bringing the feeling into your life. Because not only will you get used to those as your new normal, not only will you start to feel safer with those, but you'll start to be a match for other things that bring that feeling into your life, right? Because you're used to living with it. And so you can argue it all day long, but I guarantee you whatever you want is going to come in a lot faster, especially if you stop feeling like it's a one-day thing or a future thing and picturing that thing 5 years from now in your life, and start instead feeling like you're living it now, right? And I know it's hard. And it's frustrating when you want something so bad and it's not there yet. I have been there too, very deeply. But almost just like go gentle on yourself. Use it as a practice that you draw out of yourself and you cultivate and you just get a little bit better at, and you also play with and you like remove the intensity around. You don't have to be perfect with this. You don't have to always be in the energy. But if you can shift it just 1% today and 1% tomorrow, 1% the next day, like by the end of the month, you've already shifted that 30%. Like you've gotten used to it 30% more. Imagine a few months in, you're going to basically be there. So that's just something that made such a difference for me, is starting to think about things that I wanted as in the now, right? And you also start to realize where the gap is. Like I'm even trying to reach a business goal, and my goal feels very locked in, but I have a stretch goal that I can feel right now. I'm not quite there yet, like I can feel that I'm stretching to get there. And so I start to just ask myself things like, what about it feels scary to me? What about it doesn't feel possible? And why is that? And who do I need to become to be someone where that's already a thing in my life? How would I operate? Like, how would I go live my day? Like, what kind of energy would I have? What would I do? Like, things like that. And so it's not perfect. It's not like a code I've cracked or anything, but it is something that I start to play with until over time and over time and over time, I get closer and closer and closer until all of a sudden that thing doesn't feel like this affirmation I'm repeating to myself that's like not true. Doesn't feel like this thing that's for someone else instead of for me. Doesn't feel like this thing that's going to happen 20 years from now, but feels like it's part of my life already. And so then when it does come true, it's almost like, of course you're here. Like, I've been expecting you, right? Like, I've been waiting for this. Where have you been? Because I've already been here, mentally, emotionally, practically, physically. But then that's the last piece, right? Then it comes into that physical form, and it's so exciting. And it's just so rewarding to have seen it happen again and again. So I hope this is really exciting, encouraging. Let me know what you think. Like, do you use manifestation in your own life? Do you call it something else? Have you ever thought of it in this way? Would love to hear in the DMs on Instagram, or drop me a review if you enjoyed this. It really helps other people find this podcast and just grow this community, which means so much to me. So thank you for being here. If this episode resonated with you, I have something you are going to love. As you may know, part of what helps me create my own version of my brightest life is copywriting and content marketing. Building a content business helped me replace and surpass my corporate income, to see the world while working from anywhere, and to choose clients that light me up every single day. If you're at all curious about doing the same, I have broken it down for you in a copywriting starter kit, all the beginning steps you need to build your own profitable freelance business. I will link it in the show notes, so definitely check it out if you're interested. Thank you so much for being here, and I will chat with you next Thursday.